that, I'll also begin the recording of this session. All right. So in our last class, we began our discussion related to the effects of mass communication. We talked about different effects. We were saying that it is very important for scholars to study the effects of mass communication, and if the models related to effects, they dominate the theoretical practices of uh, the field of mass communication. All right, people keep coming in the class. Let me allow them to enter. All right. With that, we were also talking about the idea, what is a stimulus and what is a response. And I told you that in order to get a response, you need a stimulus. In my last class, although I gave you most examples from the field of advertising, but I would like to tell you that stimulus response model actually entails examples from all fields of mass communication. I gave you examples from advertising in particular because I thought that examples related to advertising were easier for me to explain. Um, all right, this is the slide that we already discussed. Then we also discussed that a stimulus response model is also known as SOR model, whereas S is the stimulus, meaning message. O means organism, meaning the receiver of the message, and the letter R denotes the response, which means the effect of the message. So commonly, this model is known as an SOR model. All right. Then we talked about hypodermic needle model and magic bullet model, like the use of these words in the context of stimulus response model. And then I told you that media many scholars were of the view that media inject messages in the veins of the audience, and audience react in uniform and predictable ways. Okay, now let me stop here again to ask you, what is the meaning of predictable here? When we say that audience react to messages in predictable ways, what does it mean? Speak loud. Yes, Alima, go ahead.
And that they have the people who created the questions or the stimulus, they already know what the response is going to be from the audience.
Yes, they can predict. So if they are going to let's say if they're going to ask people, or if they're going to convince people to to ris- to buy a particular service or buy a particular product, people will do it, which is predicted. Okay? That it means that according to stimulus response model, the responses of people are predictable, but they are also uniform. Now, what is the meaning of uniform here? What?
Constant.
Same. Uniform means same. Uniform. Okay. It means that, let's say, if I have disseminated a message using the channel of radio. Now FM. Let's take the example of FM 103. FM 103 is heard all over the city. Okay? And I want to disseminate a message for people of Lahore, and my message is related to tree plantation, that on April 15, or let's say on April 20th, uh, maximum people, students in schools and people everywhere in all sectors of the city, they should plant a tree. Okay? Now, it means that if I have disseminated this message, everyone will receive it uniformly and everyone will act upon it uniformly. Uniformly means in the same way. Okay? But is it possible? Is it possible? Is it possible that all people receive my message and then all people act upon my message? Is it possible? It's not. It's likely that some people miss the message, some people do not receive the message. Even if some people receive the message, so it's possible that they do not act upon it. even if some people are convinced, it is also possible that people do not act upon it because maybe they do not have time on that, maybe they have a prior commitment, maybe they may have several reasons. So what we see here, especially in this sentence, is actually a criticism on media. That media, according to this model, audience react in uniform ways and they react in predictable ways, which is actually not always possible. All right. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, here again, some assumptions. Assumptions are some things that we assume. This model assumes these ideas. We are going to talk about that. The model presents the image of a society that has atomized individuals who act according to their personal interests and are not affected by social relationships and constraints. All right. Now, let me explain this to you, and then I will ask you if you have any questions. According to this assumption says that the model assumes that people respond to media messages only, and they are not affected by their personal relationships. Now, it's not possible, is it? uh, there are many people who receive messages directly not from media but from other sources. Example, let me think about a suitable example. Okay, I can give you example from my personal choice of restaurants. So whenever I want to go out and eat dinner with my family at a restaurant, I do not rely on advertisements. I do not rely on information from internet. We know that even internet gives us reviews of restaurants, and many people talk about their experiences. So whenever I am in a situation wherein I have to make a choice regarding a restaurant, what I usually do is I ask my friends, I ask my family members who have had any experience. So in this case, I am being affected by social relationships, by my social constraints. I am not being affected by my media exposure. This is what it means, if that makes sense. Does it make sense to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. I explained it and then I further. G, go ahead. Somebody was saying something. Okay. This model also presents media as a dominant force that mobilizes people towards certain actions. ठीक है? And we have already talked about this a lot, that stimulus response model actually is one of the it talks about, it is a model that talks about powerful effects of media. Uh, Here, think about advertisers, government machinery, and political figures, etc. All of them appear to be powerful institutions and forces. Yes, advertisers, government machinery, political figures, they are powerful forces, they are powerful institutions, but they can use media to disseminate their messages as they consider media to be a powerful institution, a powerful channel to get messages to people. Here are some more features of stimulus response model. Stimulus response model assumes that messages are prepared and distributed on a large scale. Technology reproduces and maximizes reception and response. Technology means our devices, cell phones, internet, television. So television, the radio, uh, and our cell phones, they reproduce message and they ensure that messages are reached to maximum number of people. The model doesn't take intervening social group or structure into account. It means that this feature, this postulate means that sometimes there are social groups and social structures that affect people's choices. It's not always media. However, the model does not consider, intervene here means the model does not consider social groups. I, for example, I gave you my example that whenever I have to make a choice related to a restaurant, I do not rely on media, I rely on my social group, which includes my friends, which includes my family members. Okay. Next is the model considers a direct link between sender and receiver. This is also, all of the features that you are studying here are in a way a criticism as well on stimulus response model. The model considers a direct link between sender and receiver. So the model says, okay, there is a sender who is sending the message and the message is directly getting to the receiver. And there isn't like just sender and then receiver and then there is message in between. However, in most cases this is not the case. Many times we come to know about different media related items from our friends. So for example, whenever many we all I'm sure subscribe to Netflix, and I watch many shows, but many times it happens that if there is a popular show on Netflix related to family TV shows, because I like family TV shows on Netflix, and if there is a popular family TV show on Netflix, I usually get to know about that show from my friends or from family. So there, you see, there is no direct link between sender and receiver. Information actually now is getting to me through social structure. You see, one of the criticisms of this model is that this model does not consider social structure. This model exclusively focuses on the power of media, that media is all powerful, it gets message to people and people start responding to it. But this is not the case always. Fifth point here says all recipients of the messages are equal. Okay, this is not possible. Not all recipients are equal. Sometimes some people are passive audience. By passive audience, I mean, and please pay attention to this because this is very important from exams point of view. A passive audience is a person who just absorbs the information and acts upon it without putting his analysis to the information. That is a passive audience. However, an active audience is that he analyzes the information and then he acts on it according to his analysis. So you see, not all recipients are equal. Not all recipients are equal. They are different. Contact and exposure to media may equate with some degree of influence. Now, this means that if an individual is more exposed to media messages, he will be more influenced. You see, degree of influence depends on exposure. But this is, many times we see media only because of entertainment, not because of getting information on which we can respond. So the the bullets, the information that you see here under the heading of features of stimulus response model, this is actually related to, these are some uh, features as well as some criticism on stimulus response model. All right, this is my last slide. DeFleur, this is the same person, Melvin DeFleur, whom we discussed when we were talking about, I think, Shannon and Weaver's model. He extended Shannon and Weaver's model. This is the same scholar. So Melvin DeFleur, he extended the model in 1970s. Extended means he modified the model, and in his model, he talked about psychodynamic version, psychodynamic structure. And let me explain it to you. By psychodynamic, DeFleur meant personality traits, personality characteristics. Each person is different and people act upon messages according to their choices, according to their interests. See, according to their latent psychological process, for example, attitude formation. Now, let me explain this with the help of an example. Let's say I am interested in media content related to cooking. I'm interested in cooking magazines. I'm interested in uh, cooking TV channels like Masala TV and all that. And I'm also interested in YouTube channels related to cooking. But with that, I'm just giving an example. With that, uh, I am less interested in political information or I'm less interested in political information or political news. Now, of course, here this my the effect my like my level of response to media messages and my level of being influenced and being affected by media actually depends upon my psychodynamics. It depends upon my personality traits. See, and then my change whatever he was saying, he actually modified the model, and what he tried to say that people, yes, people are influenced by media messages, but that influence largely depends upon their personality traits. That's what he meant. So he said that in order to affect people, in order to influence people through media messages, first of all, the message has to be persuasive. A persuasive message can alter people's psychological processes latently. Latent means something hidden, something which is not clear, something which is not obvious. And then it can further lead to attitude change in the form of an overt behavior. Overt is again something obvious, and overt behavior is that overt is something obvious, something observable. uh, I suggest that you compare the word overt with another word, covert, which means something which is not obvious. Yes, it is there, but it cannot be easily seen, it cannot be easily observed. So this was a modification that DeFlo did in stimulus response model. The basic thing in stimulus response model is that there are two basic things I think that you should consider. The first basic thing is that it talks about powerful effect of media, and with that it also says that message the flow of information is direct. Message begins from sender and it directly gets to the receiver, and then receiver acts upon it regardless of his exposure to the media or his choices and all that. All right, I'll stop now to take your questions. Ahmed, I'm not sure what you mean by the message that you wrote in the chat box, बेटे.
मिस उस वक्त जो है ना आप बात कर रही थी कि कौन कौन से जो है ना मीडिया के प्लेटफॉर्म्स वगैरह जो हैं वो उन पे लोग बताते हैं रेस्टोरेंट्स वगैरह के बारे में रिव्यूज और इस किस्म की चीज़ें, तो मैंने उस वक्त ये इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ये मैसेज लिखा था.
Good, good. So, see, I was saying that, I mean, many people have criticized SOR model, and mainly this model has been criticized because of its over influence, because of its over emphasis on media. And you may have noticed that this model overly emphasizes on the importance of media. It says that media is everything. Whenever people want to make any choice, whenever people want to make any decision or anything, it's all about media. They will go to media and they will get influence from media, but that is not the case always. This is what I wanted to say. And I was giving you my example that I barely consult media whenever I want to make choices related to restaurants. I only rely on information that comes from experiences of my friends and my relatives. Anji, questions please? How was this model overall? Interesting or difficult or boring?
मिस इंटरेस्टिंग भी था और
Achha.
दूसरी बात realistic भी था.
What was it?
काफी
Sorry.
realistic. It was realistic.
Oh, realistic. Achha, let me tell you the next model that we will discuss now. We are not going to discuss it today. I'm just relating it with the model that we have ended because it's related to that. You may see this in the chat box. The next model that we are going to discuss, its name is two-step flow communication model. Let me tell you very briefly, what is this model and how is this connected to the model that we just discussed. Okay, एक minute. अच्छा जी. Pay attention to the words that you see in the title of the model, two-step flow communication model. It clearly says that information flows in two steps. Okay? Now, what are two steps? Let me tell you. Okay, let's first quickly revise stimulus response model. Stimulus response model says that information flows in just one step. Remember when I was showing you the slides, when I was showing you the information on slides, there was a slide that said that there is a direct link between sender and receiver. Just one step. Information begins from sender and it gets to receiver. Just one step. Okay? So stimulus response model essentially says that the flow of information it happens in one step. However, two-step flow communication model, two-step flow communication model says no, say that information does not happen. Communication process is not completed in just one step. It happens in two steps. And what are those two steps? So they say that information comes from media. From media, first it goes to active users of media. Okay? There are some people who actively use media as compared to people who are not active on media. So they said that information first goes to active users of media, and then from active users of media, it goes to non-active users of media. This is how it happens in two steps. Piece of information, first it goes to active users, step one. From active users to non-active users, step two. That is how they say that information happens in two steps. Let me explain this with the help of an example. I'll give you an example from my family.
मिस मैं एग्जांपल दूं?
Sure.
मिस जैसे पिछले 2-3 दिनों से वो टीएलपी वाला जो इंसिडेंट हुआ है, उस पे टीवी पे कोई न्यूज़ वगैरह नहीं थी, तो जो लोग सोशल मीडिया पे वो न्यूज़ पढ़ रहे थे या किसी इंटरनेशनल वेबसाइट पे न्यूज़ पढ़ रहे थे, वो पहले एक्टिव यूजर्स थे और उन तक न्यूज़ पहुंच रही थी. और जो लोग सोशल मीडिया एक्सेस नहीं करते, जैसे एल्डर्स हैं, एजेड लोग हैं सारे, तो उन तक ये न्यूज़ नहीं पहुंची, तो वो नॉन एक्टिव यूजर्स थे, उनको जो है वो उन लोगों ने न्यूज़ बताई जिन्होंने वो देखी थी सोशल मीडिया पे.
Good job, very good job. Now, it's a very good example. Now, can you relate it with stimulus response model? Stimulus response model says that information happens only in one step. There is a sender and information goes from sender to receiver. That's it. Okay. Let me give you, Ahmed, you gave a very good example. Let me give you another example, and then if anyone else would like to share any example, of course you can. I'll give you an example from my family. My father has always been an avid reader of newspaper. It's like if he doesn't get time in the morning, he will find the time anytime during the day where he will sit alone and he goes over every page. And honestly, my father is a kind of person who spends at least 2 hours every day reading every bit of newspaper. And I have seen now I work in my family ever since I was young or I was born. My grandfather first used to read it, and then my father continued with the same newspaper. So now I work for me like has been like a family newspaper, and my father gets a copy of Nava even if he's traveling. Even if my father is traveling and he doesn't get time to read newspaper, he would get his copy with him, he would carry it with him, and whenever he would find time, he would sit alone, he would find a corner for himself, he would go there and read the newspaper. So what I'm trying to tell here is he's apparently very well informed person who kind of reads newspaper every day. My mother, on the other hand, she barely reads newspaper. It's not like she doesn't get time, but she's usually not interested. And it's my father who usually tells information of national an international importance to my mother and to the rest of the family members. Whenever there is an information related to government's budget policy, whenever there is an information related to price hiking, or whenever there is information that is affecting us in any way, it's my father who usually transmits this information to my mother or sometimes to the rest of the family members. Now see, here is an example of two-step flow of information. Like my father, he is an active user of media in the family, and information first, he's the first one to get the information, and then from him the information goes to other less active users in the family, to my sometimes to my brothers, to myself, and to my mother. ठीक है जी? The two-step flow communication model is very interesting. Alima, you raise your hand. Do you want to ask anything with it?
I had to give an example for the active user and
Sure.
Ma'am, when we were having this communication blackout in Kashmir, so not a lot of people over here in our country got to know about it from media. Then in Kashmir, there were a few people who started posting things on social media. Our elders didn't know that they were having a communication blackout over there. So only us who were the active users of social media got to know about it, and then we raised our voices, and gradually, in a few hours, everybody got to know about it. So
Very good
that's
example. Very good example, and I'm glad to see that you are relating what you have learned. You are relating it with examples. With this, I'm going to end today's lecture. For Friday, we'll talk about two-step flow communication model. However, it is quite likely that I won't do class, but I'll let Fatima know, and I let everyone know via an email. It is likely that I don't do a class. Instead, I'll upload a recorded lecture. Okay? And the
I wanted to ask something. Can we please change the timings of the class?
How so?
मैम बिकॉज एक तो सारी रात जागना होता है, ऊपर से फिर सहरी के बाद सो जाओ तो उठा ही नहीं जाता. आज भी आई वाज स्ट्रगलिंग टू गेट अप. तो इफ एनीवन अग्रीज विद मी तो आप प्लीज क्लास की टाइमिंग्स लाइक आफ्टरनून रख लें. लाइक अगर तो सब लोग फ्री होते हैं 12 से 1 के स्लॉट में, या जिस भी स्लॉट में जो भी रेकमेंड करता है, तो प्लीज एक मतलब थोड़ा सा लेट कर लें क्लास को.
Fatima Bete, I totally understand your concern, and I believe most of you have the same concern, but unfortunately, I cannot do it. And let me tell you the reason. University administration encourages faculty to have their classes only during the time period which is allocated to them, and they have a reason for that, because if we change the class time, it's very hard to find a common slot that works for everyone. So it's quite likely that, let's say if I decide, okay, I'll do my class at 2, or I'll do my class at 3, it's quite likely that at that time other students have other classes, if that makes sense. I understand your concern, but unfortunately this is something I cannot really work on, and I have told you the reason.
मैम इफ्तार के बाद नहीं हो सकती?
किसके बाद?
इफ्तार के बाद
नहीं बेटे, I have to follow the time which is given to me by the university. Ahmed, you want to say something?
यस मिस, मैंने ये बात कहनी थी कि टाइम स्लॉट चेंज करने वाला जो आइडिया है वो इतना अच्छा नहीं है. एक ये चीज़ हो सकती है कि क्लास जो है ना लाइव ना हो, रिकॉर्डेड लेक्चर हो. ये चीज़ हो सकती है क्योंकि बच्चे अपनी कन्वीनियंस के मुताबिक फिर क्लास देख सकेंगे. ये चीज़ काफ़ी मतलब के बच्चों के लिए कन्वीनियंट हो सकती है.
लेकिन
क्योंकि
बेटे
कुछ
अहमद, I appreciate कि आप सारे ये concerns raise कर रहे हैं, but the thing is, in my experience, students get a little laid back. I mean, students do not remain as motivated as they are if teacher is doing live classes. But what I can do is, maybe I can like, for example, on Friday I will send a recorded lecture. I'll not do a live session. You can see the lecture according to your time availability. And if you have any questions, of course, I'll hold a live session on Monday. You can ask me then. तो मैं मतलब फ्राइडेज का देख लिया करूंगी, मैं फ्राइडेज को रिकॉर्ड, क्योंकि सिलेबस तो मैं उसी पेस से ही खत्म कर पाऊंगी। आई गो विद द सेम पेस बिकॉज आई हैव टू फिनिश अप द सिलेबस, ठीक है। तो बाकी जो है कि फॉर फ्राइडे, फातिमा, डज दिस वर्क फॉर यू बेटे?
Yes, ma'am, it's totally fine.
ठीक है, because it's not like I'll of course I'll ensure my virtual presence. I will be with you virtually every Monday and quite possibly every Wednesday as well. ठीक है,
Okay, ma'am.
ठीक है जी, ओके जी, थैंक यू। I'll see you all. Inshallah, you will receive a recording of the lecture on Friday, and inshallah, I will see you all on Monday. And I may verbally quiz you on my lecture related to two-step flow communication model, from which I'll upload a recorded video. ठीक है?
Thank you, ma'am. Allah Hafiz.
Okay, Allah Hafiz, Allah Hafiz.